to discover the methods to get to know your audience and keep them attentive and alert through controlled body language. Learn how to set up the agenda and decide which materials support your main points of the presentation. Find out how involved your audience is in the subject and the effective use of room setup, audio-visual aids, and handout materials. Here's some background. Presentations are used to induce a decision, a reaction, or a response from the audience. Even if a manager's job does not call for formal presentations, it doesn't mean that one can hide in an office all day and communicate by email and memos despite the technology's apparent advantages. People respond to change when told directly. When their fellow team members or employees are present, there is a sense of togetherness. Presentation skills have always been important to managers for two main reasons. Giving a presentation is often the best way to get a decision or close a deal when a number of people are involved, and giving a good presentation builds personal credibility. Professional leaders must know how to get up in front of an audience, whether small or large, and present material and information in a logical fashion. A person who can stand up and present in a well-organized fashion has an aura, a mark of credibility, and a sense of authority. In today's workplace, people everywhere, and managers in particular, are less patient as the pace of business is moving so rapidly. Presentations must be put together quickly for swift decisions. Television, faxes, the web, email, etc. have accustomed people to getting their information with exciting presentations and in quick, small bursts. This has shortened people's attention span. Presentations must be crisp, short, and well organized. Visuals should always be professional looking and not simply printed for handout purposes. Presentations should involve participation and not just a delivery of a bunch of information. The presentation is to move people to action, and what better way to do that than having them participate and keep communication lines open. Presenters must sell their ideas and proposals, not simply deliver or present information. Analyzing the audience. The first step in preparing a successful presentation is to analyze the audience. 1. Who is the decision maker? Is there more than one? Ask yourself, who will take action on this proposal of information? Everything you say or do will be aimed at meeting their needs. Some decision makers will be unfamiliar to you, and many times the person who called the meeting is not the decision maker. Do your homework. What questions will he or she ask? Consider every presentation as the answer to a question. If you are asked to present, the person has some question in mind. Find out the real question. If you know the person and their habits, you may be able to deduce what their questions are. Remember, you are not only going to present your ideas, opinions, and answers to a question, you are also going to be expected to solve any evident problems. Here's a tip. If you're making a proposal for business, pretend their question is something like, why should we let you give us a proposal? 3. How much credibility do I have with him or her? Your credibility is one of the 3 elements that will determine your ability to persuade the decision makers. The other 2 are A, the decision maker's willingness to hear the message, and B, the logic of your argument. If you're the resident expert on the subject and the decision maker won't question your authority, don't spend excessive time on detail. This will give the perception that you are insecure. To build your credibility where little exists, tell the decision maker something he or she is eager to hear, but still with no great detail. You may build your credibility somewhat by detailing your research or qualify your experience. Credibility in organization depends on your position in the organization, your experience, your technical expertise, and your likability. Other sources could be your knowledge of how things work in the organization and your informal influence with key people. 4. How much do they already know? This is key. If the decision maker has limited knowledge of the subject, you could confuse them with insufficient detail. On the other hand, if you give them too much detail, you could irritate them. If you're using acronyms, make sure everyone understands them. Otherwise, use layman's terms. If a member of your audience doesn't understand something, they will tune out or interrupt to ask for clarification. What is their view of the subject? This is key to your understanding of how the decision makers will judge your message. People do things for their reasons, not yours. People do things for their reasons, not yours. So you will be most successful if your presentation is in terms of things the decision maker cares about. An example would be if you know someone is very interested in cost. Your presentation could have a cost theme. And 6, what do I want them to do? The main theme to any presentation is the answer to the question you want to answer. Because it is an answer, it must be an assertion, and it usually involves action. Think of it this way. If the decision maker couldn't make it to the presentation and sent an associate, how would you present your presentation so the associate would remember it and be able to answer any questions the decision maker may ask? Some other areas which you should mind when preparing your presentation are: what is the decision maker's thinking style, business style, and management style? Logic tree. Information should be arranged in a logical order to create the presentation. One method to arrange the information is to use a logic tree. It forces the presenter to stay within the central premise, and at the same time provides evidence to the main argument. Keep it to one topic. Avoid the inclination to put 2 topics in the same presentation. It will divide the reader's attention and weaken the main proposal. If you have 2 proposals, write 2 presentations. Don't dilute, don't confuse. Once you lose your audience, they will not be easily convinced to listen to you again. Now let's look at a logic tree and how it can be used to logically organize your presentation. The logic tree forces you to ask one point and support it until the decision makers agree with it or stop asking questions. The beauty of giving a presentation versus writing your message is that you can watch for expressions, body language, etc. while you are stating your main point and supporting information. It is a good idea to prepare the first draft of your logic tree and go away from it for a while. When you return, you will be able to check the flow of your presentation as it is laid out in the logic tree to ensure that you are covering all the bases. The amount of detail will depend on what the reader already knows about the subject. To review your logic tree, use a checklist. Is the main point the one concept that you want the reader to remember? Do your major points all relate to your main point in some way? If you have to make any assertions, do your points all relate to the assertions in the same way? Please take some time now to work through exercise 1 found in your handouts for this module. Organizing the beginning. Now we are set to organize the beginning of the presentation. Beginnings introduce an audience to the presentation's main point, establish its urgency or importance, and provide guidelines for discussion. The beginning of the presentation should 1. Convey a sense of importance. People will settle in and concentrate on your presentation if you convince them that there is something in it for them, why it's important. Get their attention so they buy in and explain why it interests them personally. 2. State the main point. Stating the main point helps your listeners to concentrate on your subject because it tells them what it's all about. Listeners will be able to follow the logic of your presentation better. 3. Establish rapport. People respond more positively to a presenter whom they trust and whom they perceive to be an expert. Rapport is credibility and understanding. Establish credentials. 4. If you know your audience and they understand why you are making the presentation, you won't need to establish your credentials. If you're presenting to an audience which doesn't know you or is likely to oppose your ideas, you or the person introducing you must make sure that your expertise is conveyed. For example, this is John Doe. He has 15 years of experience working with the finance department, and he has developed plans for many successful projects. Most people find it difficult to state their credentials because they're afraid to appear arrogant. If you're introducing yourself, try something like, I have reviewed facts, figures, studies, etc., and based on my 15 years of experience in this field, I recommend that. It is not enough to be an expert. you must understand your audience points of view. 5. Audience profile. To prepare your beginning, check your audience profile to see if any members are likely to reject your message, and to see whether you have overlooked any criteria important to the decision maker. Because your purpose is to arrive at a common perspective, state why you chose your criteria if they are different from the decision makers. For example, finance people are involved if you are asking for money. Be aware of how people will react when you take some job and authority away from someone. 6. Provide guidelines for discussion. A good beginning must alert your audience to how you intend to develop your presentation. A beginning is like a table of contents. Without it, your audience will not be able to follow your direction, where you're going next, and when you'll finish. If your listeners can mentally check your points as you make them, they will be able to focus on your idea more easily. 7. Confine yourself to relevant data. A beginning should include only what the audience needs to know to understand and to follow your presentation. The discussion of background is usually excessive. And 8. Audience knowledge. Consult your audience profile to assess your audience knowledge of the subject. Then look at your logic tree to determine if you assume too much technical expertise or experience in any of your support points. Rather than filling the beginning with detail, provide whatever the audience needs to understand a point at the time you discuss the point. If your audience needs general information about past experience with a situation or problem, include a limited discussion of the history in your beginning, but be conservative. Opening and closing statements. Opening statement. The presenter should never underestimate the opening statement. Like in a musical piece, it sets the mood, establishes a connection with the audience, and provides a framework for discussion. A good opening statement is one that garners attention, uses the active voice, and conveys a sense of importance. An example of a forceful opener is, "We can increase net earnings by 2% by reducing 25 people from our head office staff." Or, "Our profits have increased by 15% last year due to the efforts of our product development group." Or, "We can increase our hiring effectiveness by 40% by training our people to use structured interview processes." There are some openers, however, that are taboo in business culture. Gloom and doom statements are audience killers. Although they may seem like attention grabbers, they result in destroying morale within the department or team. That's not the feeling any presenter wants to leave with an audience. Remember, you will be working with them after the presentations end. The idea is to reinforce the team, not destroy them in the first 2 minutes of a presentation. An example, a production manager started the presentation to try to improve quality by saying to everyone, "Your quality is so poor, you're going to put us out of business." Talk about a downer. He has lost the audience and made them hostile right off the start. 2. Another no-no is to start off with a joke. You may offend someone in the audience. The purpose is not to entertain. Leave that up to the comics and talk show hosts. In the opening statement, if you have not been introduced, you must of course introduce yourself. Good ways to begin are to make a statement about why the presentation is important to the audience. Example, "We can increase our customer delivery effectiveness by 40% by training our people to use follow-up calls to the shipping department and carriers to ensure that the order is on its way." If you expect opposition, you can build rapport by opening with a comment that indicates you understand the audience's position. You may offer a question soliciting your audience's concerns, which can be an effective beginning with a small group. The drawback to this is that it commits you to considering every topic that the audience raises. Use this technique only when you know what issues will be raised and you are prepared to discuss them all. Once you have made your opening statement, go into your logic tree and make your main point with all your supporting data. After delivering the message, you must close. Closing statement. The closing statement is the opportunity for concluding words to the audience. In essence, they are summations of the main points, with emphasis on recommendations and needed actions. Because the presentation's purpose is to induce a response, not merely present information, the conclusion has to either contain a recommendation or a proposed action. A good presenter will end a presentation with a recommendation or conclusion and the steps required for action. You may also reiterate the major support points, especially if members of your audience will have to provide a summary of your presentation to others who could not attend. The amount of material that you include in your presentation depends on your audience's commitment to your position. The more committed they are, the less you need to say. And lastly, thank the audience for their time. The storyboard. Storyboards are used to provide visual sketches of your material. It can be compared to a path. Unlike written communication, presentations evoke a sense of storytelling, a great part of our oral tradition. Central to sketching out a story is the main point, but in written communication, the reader can refer to the words over and over again. Spoken communication is different. Once said, words are lost. The audience does not have a document to refer to again. This is where presentations differ from any form of written communication. That is why most presentations are visual flip charts, overheads, videos, and various multimedia like PowerPoint to support the material and emphasize the main point. A storyboard will provide the presenter with an idea of what visuals are needed. For example, you are sketching out a presentation on the high costs of recruiting customer service representatives. You could use a graphic to illustrate how you might plot the presentation using a storyboard. On the top, you would place the main argument or topic. Recruiting costs are too high. Below, on the left side, are the supporting details, such as interview costs and turnover rates. And on the right side, you place data statistics and supporting numbers, which might contain tables or charts. Every major point in your presentation should include a rough storyboard. Organizing the storyboards according to the logic tree becomes the structure and flow details. You can then prepare the final visuals without having to worry about whether you missed something or not. Storyboards help you check the flow of the argument. Design rough visuals to support your message and develop transitions in your presentation. Although managers may complain that this is too much effort for a simple presentation, no presentation is ever simple. Never. Not to the audience. Their time is valuable, and as such, presentations need to be well planned. Effective presentations move the audience, plant seeds, and ultimately induce a change in thinking. Much work goes into a well-presented one. During the presentation. The material is ready, the preparation completed, and the presentation time looms near. You stand in front of the audience and you freeze, forgetting your speech. Sound familiar? Most professional speakers can recount the first few failed appearances in front of an audience. You're not alone. One of the largest problems is nervousness, causing a gamut of strange reactions, from speaking rapidly or with a high-pitched tone, to standing on the podium frozen, to fainting. These reactions are not linked to personality types as much as to having confidence in front of an audience. While some people have inherent talents and are natural, effective speakers, all managers can overcome shyness or stage fright by following some guidelines. Professional speakers have shared 10 tips for better presentations. 1. Control nervousness. Nervousness is normal for any presenter, especially for first-timers. You must shift your focus from yourself to your audience. Concentrate on communicating your message to your audience rather than wondering how you look to them. Focus on convincing your audience that your position is correct. Some speakers recommend that the speaker focus on the farthest person in the room, forcing the voice to be projected. This helps release all the pent-up energy, which calms the person enough to allow him or her to follow a natural speaking rhythm. When nervous, a person's diaphragm tends to raise and strangle the voice. A tip is to breathe deeply from the stomach and relax. Drop your shoulders and breathe. Another tendency when nervous is to talk quickly. Slow down. Make a note for yourself if you need to. Just slow down. Establish distance from your audience. 2. A management presenter should be no more than 4 to 5 feet away from the audience. Farther away, you may be considered stuffy or fearful, Any closer, and people become uncomfortable. Get away from the podium and stand in front of the flip chart. Do not let the flip charts be the main part of your presentation. You are the center of attention. If you're presenting to an unfamiliar group, start further back and move in closer as your presentation progresses, and you will build rapport with your audience. 3. Control posture. Good posture gives the impression of authority. Do not fold your arms, as it encourages slouching and hinders breathing. By having an erect posture, you convey a sense of confidence to the audience. Look them directly in the face, stand tall, and tell the audience what information is coming their way. 4. Dress well. Flashy clothes divert attention from your message. Do not move with the fads. Always wear basic business attire. Dark blue and conservative suits, shirt and tie for men, and dresses for women are pretty safe bets these days. 5. Move with purpose. If you stick around the projector or grip the lectern until your knuckles turn white, everyone knows you're terrified. Move around the room and use your hands as you speak. You may convince yourself that all is well. Take advantage of your natural gestures, but don't use the same one over and over. Tailor your gestures to reinforce your point. This is referred to as dynamics. 6. Control your expressions and smile. Facial expressions are difficult to control and often give clues about how you really feel. One way to control facial expressions is to make sure that you're comfortable with your material and prepared to respond honestly to any questions. Smiling breaks down barriers and helps your audience feel that they're included, and they will smile back. Maintain eye contact. You will lose support faster if you stare at your notes, a spot on the wall, etc. Don't focus on the key decision maker. They could become uncomfortable, not flattered. Don't fix your eyes on one person, but include all your audience. Focus on the people who smile or nod along with your points. Professional speakers recommend an approach of scanning the audience. That is, rest your glance on an audience member's eyes for about 4 to 5 seconds, and then repeat with another person. This is a safe way to establish rapport. Which brings us to 8, establish rapport. People tend to believe those with a background, education, or belief system similar to their own. This is not the case 100% of the time, but you have to find a way to reinforce your commonality with your audience. Watch for signs, a nod of the head, a smile, in apparent agreement of the point which you are making. 9. Speak clearly. Enunciate clearly. Pause appropriately. Provide verbal guideposts. Say first, second, third, and offer visual support. When you rehearse your presentation, have another person evaluate your verbal mannerisms. Vary the rate at which you speak. For complex material, speak slowly. Avoid run-on sentences and use pauses for emphasis to separate thoughts and ideas. Pauses are also used to emphasize a strong point that needs to resonate with the audience. Silence speaks volumes. Remember that breathing through the diaphragm and speaking clearly work together. Finally, 10. Use your notes effectively. Never try to memorize a presentation word for word. Trying to recall everything takes so much energy that you have little left to relate to your audience. What if you forget a line and mix up your points when you go back to cover it? Some presentations are too long and complicated to leave to memory alone. There is nothing wrong with using small prompting clues or another device that helps in the clear presentation of facts. Worrying about remembering adds to your nervousness. Use your visuals as your notes or guidelines to help you through your presentation. Use cue cards that you can keep in the palm of your hand. Please take some time now to work through exercise 2 found in your handouts for this module.